In our national anthem, O Canada, the opening line after you say, O Canada, is our home. For me, my home has been the same neighborhood since 1970 in South London. So as somebody that has always called Canada home, I'm always so inspired by the stories of those who come to Canada and make a new home in our great country. That includes my wife's mom, dad, brother, and sister. Tom and Christine were born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1940, met as teenagers, got married in 1963 and had 2 children, Paul and Lynn, and in 1971 decided to make Canada their home. As soon as they arrived, they did what all new Canadians do. They made Canada better. For example, with them, they adopted a child from foster care, my brother-in-law, David. They started a praise choir that would visit hospitals and seniors' homes. And in 1976, they'd give the world, I think, its greatest blessing, my wife. And their family of 6 in their new home was complete. And then came 11 grandchildren. And as of 2021, 4 great-grandchildren. Now, my eldest daughter, Torry, born in 2005, we spell her name Torry, which is the Scottish boys' way of spelling that name. And on this Remembrance Day, I tell you that because she is named in honor of my wife's grandfather, my father-in-law's dad, Thomas Torry Hunter. Thomas Torry Hunter was a house painter with 3 children, Edith, Jeanette, and Tom, and married to Janet. And in 1941 went to Singapore to defend it as a member of the British Army against the invading Imperial Japanese forces. And in February of 1942, he died defending the homes of others. This picture is 4 generations of my wife's family. My 5-month-old daughter, Torry, her mother, Liz, her grandfather, her papa, Tom, and then a plaque located in St. Giles Cathedral in downtown Edinburgh, Scotland, in honors 5 local men who died in the Battle of Singapore. One of them, my wife's grandfather, Thomas Torry Hunter. We remember. My middle name is Ross, and thanks to marrying into a Scottish-Canadian family, I've discovered my own Scottish roots. The Scots are in clans. Clans are families. And I have been an executive member with the Clan Ross Association of Canada for 15 years. My great-grandfather off my mom's side of the family was a Ross from North Scotland. In 2005, our Clan Ross Association was contacted by author Stephen Duff, based in Toronto, as a retired teacher. Stephen knew that Clan Ross, as an association, like to do different historical projects around the country to honor Rosses with Scottish background doing great work in Canada. For example, the city of Victoria was founded by a Ross. And he wanted to bring to our attention the exploits of a Dr. Alexander Milton Ross, born in 1832 to Scottish parents in the town of Belleville, Ontario, who passed in 1902. He felt that this 19th century Canadian hero was underappreciated, and considering I'd never heard of him, I agreed. It took 4 years, but in 2009, our Clan Ross Association helped establish this plaque in what is called the Freedom Park in Chatham, Ontario. And we were working with the Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society in creating this plaque. You see, Chatham and other national sites nearby, like Buxton and the town of Dresden, which has a site called Uncle Tom's Cabin, these were key destinations at the end of the Underground Railroad. When speaking with Gwen Robinson, at the time the president of the Chatham-Kent Black Historical Society, she called Dr. Alexander Ross her favorite Canadian. Why? Dr. Ross, in addition to having his medical doctorate from a school in New York, was also an esteemed expert in insects and birds. As a teenager, he read a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe that made so many people aware of what was truly like to be a slave in the southern United States in the 1800s. So he joined what was called the abolitionist movement in Northern America to fight against slavery. So under the guise of studying insects and birds, Dr. Ross in the 1850s, while in his 20s, made several trips into the Deep South. He would visit with plantations, build a comfort level with the plantation owners right away because he was a Mason and many of them were Masons, and he was a doctor, and he would say he was there to study insects and birds and would be allowed to stay on the plantation for several days. But in secrecy, he would meet with slaves and leave them maps and directions to safe houses and stores of food so that when they were ready, they could escape to the north, to freedom on the Underground Railroad, to the northern United States and to Canada. As Gwen said to me, can you imagine the courage of this white man from Canada risking his life, risking his career as a doctor, so that people like my great-grandparents and so many others could find freedom and a new home. Slaves were told to travel by night and follow the North Star to Canada, to freedom. So inspired by Stephen Duff and his book about Dr. Alexander Milton Ross, our Clan Ross Association in 2006 decided to plan a weekend of events where Rosses from across Canada would come to London and spend a day on the Saturday to explore sites of the Underground Railroad, located about an hour west of where I am here in London, in what's called Chatham-Kent. As we were planning the event, as a former student leader, who when I was in high school and university, I always thought, how can we make this bigger? How can we get more people to the activity, make it more interesting? How can we make it more inclusive? Who can we invite? So working with Stephen Duff, I said, Do you know any living descendants of Dr. Alexander Milton Ross? And he had been in contact with two of Dr. Alexander Ross's great-grandchildren. So what a thrill that we could invite Jillian and Janet and Jillian's husband Patrick to be our guests of honor on that weekend in 2006 as we learn more about the Underground Railroad, its connection to our home here in Canada, and more about Dr. Alexander Ross, their great-grandfather. It was in the planning of that event that one of the most amazing moments of my life happened. It was 2005, a few weeks after Torry was born. I have Jillian's number. I'm calling England. She picks up the phone. She had that fantastic British accent. I felt like I was talking with the Queen. Oh, I was talking a mile a minute. I was so excited, telling her how I had learned about the exploits of her great-grandfather. Our Clan Ross Association wanted to do a tour of the Underground Railroad sites and learn more about him and our connection to the Underground Railroad, and how we'd be thrilled if they would be our guests of honor the following year. She was overwhelmed and looking forward to it as best as she could at that time. And then it happened. I said to Jillian, "Have you ever been to Canada before?" She replied, "Yes, we had to make Canada our home during World War II." Had? I said. "Well, yes," he said. "My father was an accountant with the British government in Singapore. And when the Japanese invaded, civilians like us were able to escape. And I had to live for 3 years in Victoria, British Columbia, with my sisters and my mom. My father was actually stranded in Australia." I was stunned. In fact, my silence was so long, Jillian actually said, "Andrew, are you there?" "Jillian," I said, I can't believe your connection to Singapore. My wife's grandfather died in the Battle of Singapore in 1942. My newborn daughter is named Torry in his honor. Now it was her turn to have a long silence. She then said, "You tell your wife that her grandfather and soldiers like him saved our lives. That my father literally got on the last boat to leave Singapore. And those brave men and women fought so that people like my dad could reach safety in Australia. You tell your father-in-law thanks for the sacrifice of his family." And in 2006, at the Clan Ross National Gathering here in London, Janet and Jillian were able to meet my father-in-law, give him a hug, and tell him in person, "Thank you. Thank you for the sacrifice of your father, and thus the sacrifice of your entire family, your mom and your sisters, so that when our home was in danger and our lives were threatened, your dad came to our aid." And this amazing moment in my family's life came together because we took a look at an event and thought, how can we make it more inclusive? How can we invite more people? A skill I learned starting as a student leader in high school and university. and brought together by the incredible international connections that make Canada such a unique home to all of us. Canada, follow the North Star to freedom. Canada, a refuge in a time of war. Canada, our home.